Hello and welcome to the Varietal Show. My name is Rory, and you're watching Varietal Literature's YouTube channel. If you've never been here before, this is a channel for writers and people who enjoy narrative, really. And what we do on Tuesdays is we read old folktales and fairy tales, so if you're coming from that, that's not what this show is. You might like this anyways, but just so you know. What we do here is a write-along stream, and that just can mean kind of whatever you want it to mean. It could mean you could join the chat. I'll try to work in your ideas as it suits what we're doing. Or you can write your own stories based on prompts and stuff we produce here. And the hope is by the end we get sort of a first draft of something down, and you get a chance to sort of participate in creating something. If you've never been here before, you wouldn't know, but down in the description below, if you're not watching it live anyways, there will be timestamps. You can jump ahead to wherever interests you. I'm going to explain what Solarpunk is, so if you already know what that is in this game, you know, you might want to skip ahead to when we start writing or something. But that's all I got to say about that. I see chat's already kicking up. Big Drew, welcome back. Victor says, I'm getting a bit of a Circle or the Truman Show vibe. Am I far off? It is not dystopian. So if you're looking for twisted and weird, I'm sorry, this stream will disappoint. Solarpunk is utopian. And GS says, love the art. I wish I could take credit for it, but I cannot. This is the cover of the game we're going to play called Green Skies. And it is stunning. Who did the art? Does it tell me in the back? Does it tell me in the front? Cover art by Lol Illustrations. I don't know how to say that. I'm sorry. Holly South says, what are we doing? I ate too many pierogies. Well, we're not eating pierogies, so no worries there. And Gloria says, I will be learning new terms tonight. Oh, it's a popular night. Yeah, actually, I will spend some time talking about Solarpunk. So if you guys are disinterested in that, I don't know. Now, give me like 5 minutes to sort of blab, and we'll get to the more interesting stuff. But of course, that means I need to introduce what we're doing here tonight. And that is right here. This portion of the show is called litgames. It is the main thing we do. It stands for literature games, but they can also be solo tabletop RPGs where you adopt a role and then you take some sort of prompts and write about it, which is largely what we're going to be doing here. But it can also be, they're also called lyric games or expressive games. They're not really games per se. They're sort of structures for creativity. And the main thing we're trying to do here is create sort of the beginnings of a story, a vignette, or some characters. Just because I enjoy writing, and presumably if you're watching along, you enjoy either watching that process or joining in. So that's lit games. In particular, though, the game that we're doing tonight is called Green Skies. Skies. Now, Green Skies describes itself as a solarpunk game about kindness and caring for those around you, which is true enough, but obviously the term solarpunk is not terribly widely known. It has sort of a presence online, and I'm not sure that it's reached beyond that, but I believe it comes from a manifesto written by someone named Andrism. I don't quote me on that. It's been a while since I looked at it. It does involve, as most manifestos, certain clear ideas, but I'm just going to kind of give you the rough, broad strokes of it. Solarpunk is the idea that we are in the future, and in the future, we have integrated technology in a way that is not destructive to the environment. So it is a high-tech world blended with an agrarian world. So it's very much like you grow your own gardens, but they might be picked by sort of semi-sentient AI. In this case, we'll be taking on the role of a building that needs to take care of its residents, and has its own AI systems. So it's a blend of high technology and sort of agrarian stuff. And things that are core to it, I mean, it's in the name. Solar power and wind power, like alternate forms of power that are not destructive, is key to it. It generally embraces anything to do with growth or community. It doesn't align itself explicitly with any particular ideologies, but I will say it kind of always comes together with either some form of communal anarchism or communism or primitivism or something to that effect. At the very least, it does come with the base idea that we are a communal species, not independent. Solarpunk is sort of niche in the punk things, but there's a lot of punks. There's crystal punk, there's what do they call the Fallout world? It's something punk. I can't think of what it's called. Usually, by the way, the source of the name of a punk is what is the primary power source or form of technology in that world. So there's steampunk, there's cyberpunk, there's solarpunk, and so on. Okay, give me a second. There's a lot of people in chat. People are talking about avocados. Big Drew says here all this time, I thought it's lit, like these games are lit, like the young people say. It was a phrase coined by Dana, who's not been on the channel in a couple of years because she went off to do grad school, but I believe she was punning on it. She's more a poet than I am. Jenna says Solarpunk has been around for at least 10 years. I think it's almost exactly 10 years, maybe a little bit more. What's the punk part, GS says? Punk, I think it's the DIY thing. In Cyberpunk, the punk was about sort of the rebellion against the systems that ensnare you, because Cyberpunk is dystopian. But in steampunk, I don't really know what it has to do with punk in any way. It's an interesting concept, I suppose, that we were still developing high tech with steam. But in the case of Solarpunk, I think it's very much it's DIY community-based action, which is a punk concept from the 80s. Holly's House says the latter seasons of Westworld used to use a lot of those cool buildings in Singapore. Yeah, I would say there's a lot of that kind of styling. And Big Drew says, can we create a solarpunk world out of the ruins of an ancient civilization? We sure can. Specifically out of the ruins of our own civilization, which is usually how it goes. Okay. Yeah, I would agree with that, Jenna, but I'm not going to repeat it. Okay. So if I had one criticism about this game, though, and again, you can get this game from itch.io. I will have the link in a pinned comment later. It's that it doesn't really give you a prompt structure, and that, to me, is mostly what solo tabletop RPGs, what you're looking for. So we're going to use some more random prompt structures, but it does mean that we need some tenants for a building, and that's where you can come in, chat. I want you to imagine the version of you that is in a place where there's pretty little birds, fresh air, fresh rainwater that you can drink each morning. You have all your little plants that you can grow. It's not anti-tech, so, you know, if you have, like, video games or something like that, it still exists in this world. If you want to create a version of yourself or some character that you think fits in this world, give me a brief description and a name in the chat ASAP, and I will try to work them into my little building of Solarpunk people. I will read you the little prompts that they give you here, but the problem with that, of course, is that the structure of the game, first of all, is longer than we'll be able to get through anyways. You build up stories of your building, and then within them you collect stories of your tenants. But it doesn't really give us much in the way of prompts other than sort of like, what do you look like as an AI or a building? How do you view yourself? In other words, how sentient are you, and so on. And I'm just going to kind of work with the idea that we're basically AI sentient. Okay, and one other thing, and I don't think we're going to have time to really engage with this side of it, but there is indeed a part of this where you draw a full floor plan, and then you decorate their little rooms. And I'll show you what I was working on today, and we'll immediately understand why. I'm probably not going to spend much time doing this part of it in the stream. While I did enjoy it, my floor plan with the light spilling in here and trying to simulate its watercolor aesthetic didn't go great. My bush here looks like mold. And my hammock looks like a dried out leaf, and my carpet, I don't know what it is. The GS says, so I'm AI. No, the building is the AI. You'll be real people living in the building. Anyways, if for some reason we feel really motivated or inspired, or we need inspiration for our writing, coming here and drawing a little bit of the floor plan could work. Carpet is a water stain, says Holly says, yeah. I mean, I'm not a visual artist, so you get what you get. Anyways, that's the gist of it. The game gives us very little in the way of structure, but let's get a sense of our building. I will say that this is a hopeful, utopian environment. It is a place. It doesn't mean that people can't have rough edges. Obviously, if the characters don't have their own quirks or grumpiness, or, you know, the alcoholic that has to brew his own beer and so he's grumpy between batches or whatever else. Like, there's plenty of places you can go with it that are still interesting. But at its core, it's about people who recognize the need for a community to survive in a relatively eco-friendly area. GS says, I'm all about the bees and flowers and floral scents. Okay, well, think about your sort of dream little room where the bees are humming when you wake in the morning. And what kind of flowers you have growing from the outside of the building to the inside. Think about those sorts of things and then feed them to me as prompts. Okay, so I'm going to read you their introduction on the morning routine here to give you some sense of how they envision this, and then we'll write a little snippet, a little vignette about our first character, maybe our second, maybe a third if we can go long enough. So this is not my writing. Every morning as the sun rises and the birds begin to sing in their nests, you awaken too. You being the building AI here is what they mean. You hum through your morning protocols, running diagnostics on the solar panels on your roof and watering the plants along your walls. Aside from the sound of wind rustling through the leaves, it's quiet, peaceful. Inside, residents begin to get up and go through their own morning routines. Some shower using recycled rainwater as others make themselves coffee and toast using solar power. Eventually, most of them leave for their work, leaving you to your own devices. In the basement, you recycle plastic and other materials. Any repairs that need to be made and whatever is not used is given to those who need it, I think they mean to say. Your programming does not allow you to worry. I don't know if I'm going to keep that. By the way, that's their own detail, but even if it did, you would have nothing to worry about. If you need more materials, others would gladly provide it. Outside, the sun shines on the city of green and steel. Where there might be gray concrete, artists have been hired to decorate it. Wherever possible, plants grow freely. This is your city and these are your people. Now, I'm not going to take that full hog. I want a more personable AI. But GS Holly's House says, I'm confused already. We're a building in a Solarpunk world telling stories about our tenants. And you guys are going to be tenants, or give me ideas for tenants, or, you know, no one wants to do that. I could just write it. The Easterly Breeze. Yes, we are the building. Holly's House. I'm the building specifically. I'm asking you guys to come up with tenants for that building. But it's done from the perspective of the building. The Easterly Breeze. Maybe there's an engineer that helps maintain the AI, and the engineer and the AI are friends. What's their name, Jenna? The Easterly Breeze. Stirred the morning glory vines, and woke Audrey with a sneeze. Audrey is perhaps my most important friend and tenant in my building. She maintains the code of my AI, so it does not degrade. I have seen other buildings who lack such a friend. Get stuck in cycles where they water the same plant until it drowns, while the rest drown. But my systems are kept clear of such corruption by the thoughtful efforts of dear sneezing Audrey. What's Audrey's room look like, guys? She likes computers, I suppose. Holly's House says, I would definitely have things living in me, like Disney-type pestilence, talking bugs and rats. Disney-type pestilence is hilarious. Big Drew is writing his own story there, which I look forward to reading at the end. I do like the idea that the AI sees little bugs and stuff in their patterns, and sort of, to them, it's just another form of life. Still, it was only just past dawn, and Audrey could sleep in the brightest rays of sun. Most sleep for another hour or so. I'm gonna go to my character generator just a second. This man makes you think of a proud lion. He has slanted eyes the color of milk chocolate. What a terrible analogy. His luxurious, wavy, plum-colored hair is worn in a style that reminds you of a burning fire. He is very short and has an angular build. Skin is tan, he has hollow cheeks. His wardrobe is professional. Sure. I can work from that. So he's got brown eyes. I don't know what plum-colored hair is. Taro. Taro was the early riser. Taro from Unit 104. Well, Jenna says, I think computers make sense. Maybe there's also some books and a drafting table, like she does both software engineering and hardware. Just love the computer chip aesthetic. They have to solder out the chips to turn off hell. Okay. So that sort of retro-futuristic thing. She had been... I'm gonna step back for a minute, say a little more about Audrey's room. She'd been up late. Even when I went into low power... She was huddled over her wide, handmade drafting table. Lit by the moonlight. Tell me about some of the insects, Holly, and that the computer can watch each day, and what they do. She didn't like running the computers at night. She felt it was irresponsible to draw that much power off the reserves. So she often worked by hand. In the late hours. Audrey was designing a small arcade machine. For the kids that we're growing fidgety with baseball games in the tall grass. Ooh, I like that, Holly. That's a great idea. I'm gonna take this away. The table was a gift from Taro in Unit 104. He was already up. Drinking coffee, warmed by the coals of his smith furnace? Is that the right term for them? I do like this idea of just sort of drifting from person to person, because we have to kind of limit what we can do in an hour. And I kind of want to get everyone's cool ideas in. I would rather just have a good sense of the space in the world. In part because I have actually every intention of writing a Solarpunk story. I have sort of half an idea. Holly's House says a brazier. I think a brazier is a brazier for smelting, or is a brazier for lighting stuff? Because the way I know brazier is in D&D, and it's only ever used as a light there, but that doesn't mean that's its only function. Let's go with brazier, though, by the coals of his brazier. GS says yes, like Rear Window. Okay, but with less murder. Oh, good idea, Jenna. Okay, Holly and Jenna. What does the etymologist... What's their name? What do they look like? What are they doing this early in the morning? Holly Sauce says, brazier is specifically for eating lumps of coal. Didn't know that, but that works here, doesn't it? Good idea. Warmed by the coals of his brazier. What are we working on today, Taro? I asked. The caramel I used last week. Gotta have another order. It's the stout men. He pulled his fingers through his wavy hair, taming down a cowlick for a moment, and answered, entomologist. Holly House says it's actually entomologist. Yeah, an etymologist, actually, now that I think about it, that's the traces the roots of words, right? I did know that. I should have been more on that. Jenna says, maybe they're collecting bug samples. Oh, that's a cool idea. Holly says, it's me. I'm the entomologist. Okay. Sure. Give me a description. He pulled his fingers through his wavy hair and answered, swing in the back, it's had its last good season. The rains have gotten in the welds. And with the young'uns getting bigger, it's about ready to toss them right off and collapse where it stood. That is thoughtful of you, Taro. I responded, is there any resource I could channel to assist you? Ooh, GS is collecting seeds. I like that. Just keep them lights on. Taro said with a rare grin. Probably about to be a late one. You know how I am when I get my hooks in a project. I do, I said. Holly's House says I like to compare the building full of people to my colonies of insects and make sardonic comments about how the insects function better as a society. Okay, cool. Emotion alert. Flagged in my system. From Holly's room. Sorry, Taro. I must take my attention elsewhere. I suspect Holly is simply waking up, but it may be the case that her ants got out again. I hope not. Taro grumbled. I'm still finding them. In my damn fridge. GS is all the way into this. I mean, I feel like I wish there was a way I could just let you guys write it. You guys are doing a great job here. One of Ollie's spider specimens has once again escaped. Just says, my Solarpunk world would be 16 episodes like all the K-dramas. Yeah, there is a love in soap operas of like basing it on a building, isn't there? I switched my primary operations to Unit 203. Holly's suite. Holly was an entomologist and kept a substantial sample of mostly living insects. She was largely concerned with maintaining numbers and populating the rather large communal garden with a healthy ecosystem. Her prized possession was a lucite, was a scrapped and polished slab of lucite, once a cover on some old world bar top. That held back the soil which a large colony of brown ants had carved paths into. I like that line, Holly's house. I think that's a good introduction to the character. Good morning, Holly. I set to continue my morning protocol message and check on her well-being. But she interrupted with a sigh. She said, I didn't mention this before, but for some reason, the building's name is Melissa to me. This morning when I was putting together all the stuff that goes into this stream, Melissa was the name that came to me. Melissa, does it frustrate you how wasteful we humans are? I beg your pardon, Holly. I do not understand what you mean exactly, I answered. Like, take our dead. he said in a matter of fact. I think we will have time for another character, guys. So, oh, that's right. I know whose character. We're doing GS's because GS has a wonderful idea. GS, how old is your character? Roughly speaking. We just buried old Gary last week, right? We did, and it was a solemn occasion. I answered, but Holly continued as if I had not. But obviously, if we were like the ants and not hung up on all this weird sentimentality, we clearly should have just composted him. Gary would have made great soil. Just says, does everyone get composted at 40 in this society? Am I too old? Again, it's a utopia. Nobody's getting composted. How much better would that have been? She said, with an incredulous face, as if nothing was more obvious than that. Holly, I answered tactfully. Recall that the committee did not agree with your proposal and asked you yes, I know. Asked me to stop insisting we compost our dead. But look at the ants, she said, leaning in closer to the old bar top bolted to the wall. I just don't see how you can deny the brilliance of their social economy. There was a creak at the door that caught both our attention. GS. Oh, wait. Gloria says hidden fourth character, macro environment liaison internal synchro system assistant, which of course is Melissa. Very well done. GS, what is the name of your character? I didn't even get it. I did that thing again where I went for a 2-hour walk, or an hour and a half in this case. I wasn't listening. I was listening to this actually playlist while I was doing it, which I made for this stream. I was mostly just trying to check if it was okay. Your name is Delight. Okay. Gloria says I was just trying to make a funny acronym, and I think you did an excellent job, Gloria. But what if it was Mel and Issa? Issa inside Mel! It was Delight. An elegant but cheerful middle-aged woman. With brown... You know what? I'm taking out middle-aged. Cheerful woman. With hair turned blonde from brown in the sun. She held a small canvas bag, staining with the dirt inside it. She, not he. And stared with concern at Holly. What? Holly asked. My dear, as I said before, we have plenty of compost. We are not ants. She began in her sing-song voice. Okay, now that we're talking about composting people for real. Jenna says, you can have both sentimentality and efficiency with human composting. It's legal in California now, and the place that does it has a really beautiful facility, and it's still a funeral with family. One even looks forward to dying. You know, my favorite story of death is whale fall. And anyone who knows me has probably heard this before, but whale fall is when a whale dies and sinks deep into the ocean. And when it gets down to the bottom of the ocean, the things down there so rarely have food get that far down and be that focused that they eat everything. And for like months, it becomes its own little city of these deep water fish that eat the whale fall. I just think that's just so gorgeous. I know it's probably a strange thing, but yeah, I mean, there's no way for this to happen, but that would be my preference. But unfortunately, I think humans float too much to make that work. Also, obviously, you can't just dump human bodies in the ocean. Because of the damn nanny state. Won't let us just dump our dead in the ocean. But yeah, I would like to be whale fowl when I die. That'd be cool. My dear, as I said before, we have plenty of compost. We are not ants, she began in her sing-song voice. But we could be. Holly said with exuberance. Delight seemed like she had more to say, but instead nodded and added, I suppose that's true, dear. Delight carried on. Onto her room. It was a place bolted on every wall, at every height. With planters laden in rich soil and vibrant blooms. Some hung with vines of ruby tomatoes. Others wound up the wall with fuchsia blooms. Delight was a collector and preserver of seeds. She would leave sometimes for days at a time, only returning when she felt she had enough new seeds for her collection. The communal gardens, plump pumpkins in the fall, were hers that she found out in the western woods. The tall stalks of corn were one of her proudest achievements, for it was an old desiccated cob found stuck in the gutter of some abandoned superhighway. That had the kernels, those kernels. It took her great effort to grow the first stalk. The winding heather that lined the paths and perfumed her room. Holly's House says it's not the weight of humans, it's that we don't have the mass. We would be eaten long before we reach the deep ocean. There's not enough of us physically, but also, like, we don't sink well. Jessa, speak for yourself, Holly. So does Big Drew. Speak for yourself right after, Holly. I have plenty of mass. Great minds, or should I say great masses. Holly is a mere seagull feather who floats on the surface. Then Holly's House adds, why have silly flowers when you can have orchid mantis that just look like flowers and bite the heads off flies? Gia says, indeed, why? Orchid mantis are so pretty, though. They are very pretty. I don't know if everybody knows what an orchid mantis looks like, but I'm going to pull it up since it's in the vibe of this stream, and we're just about done our story for now. That is an orchid mantis. I'll stick to my garden of terrestrial arthropods, says Holly's House. But I wouldn't say no to nachos. They're talking about nachos now. Okay. The winding heather that lined the paths and perfumed her room. Was a particularly tricky clipping, as it was a far climb up in the spire to the north, and the plant was near dead, and she finally returned. Holly's House says, eating insects is the way of the sustainable future. It's definitely part of it. I have eaten insects. If you can get over the squig factor, some of them are quite good. Some of them aren't. Like I had sort of fried and dipped in chocolate crickets, and I didn't really like them. They just sort of tasted like the shells of because it basically is the shells of shrimp, which I do eat, so I wouldn't mind. But the thing that actually was quite good was grubs, sort of fried and dipped in chocolate. It tasted like buttery popcorn. If I didn't tell you what it was, you would love it. Last question, GS. What plants did Delight bring back today? And once I have that, I will sort of wrap up our little vignettes, read it back, and then we'll take a look at what Drew came up with, and we'll call it a day. This has been actually quite delightful, by the way, folks. And it's really nice to sort of hang out and just sort of share in that creativity and not always feel the need to construct too much of a story. I know this doesn't always make for the most compelling stream, so I wouldn't say that I want to do this every time, but it has been very cool to see what you guys would do if you were in this kind of world. And I do find it interesting because it is, of all the sort of worlds of like steampunk and, crystal punk and punk, and whatever else. It is the most achievable, really. You know, it doesn't really propose crazy technology. It just proposes what I think should be the basic core idea of society, which is you don't want to live in a way that destroys all the things you need to live. And you don't need to be anti-technology. You can use it to sort of make your life easier, which is the point, not to make a select group of people richer because they don't have to hire people. Jenna says, I love Solarpunk because of it being achievable and how hopeful it is. Yeah, and it, frankly, Gen Z and millennials and whoever the next one is, we're all huddled together around this dim, glowing fire of hope that Solarpunk gives us. Oh, Big Drew has some suggestions. Delight Brock, Easter lilies, Daphnidora, one of my favorite smelling flowers of springs, and a wealth of petunias and pansies. Love it, Big Drew. Don't know what most of those are. I know what Easter lilies are. What did you bring today, Delight? I asked. Oops. Easter lilies were blooming just up from the beachhead, about a day's hike northeast. On the way, my nose caught some Daphnidora. Daphnidora? Oh, but the real find, Melissa, was on the way back. My nose caught the distinct scent of Daphnidora. Big Drew does it confirm Daphnidora. Thank you, Big Drew. She clapped her hands together and danced on her toes. I told you, Delight, there would be more to find, Delight, I said. Delight's Daphnidora had wilted under a particularly warm day last year. She feared the plant, a relatively rare one, to have survived through the toxic years. Might have been the last one she found. Delight, was squealing with delight. When she calmed down, Holly's house says, Penny, Serafina, and Santiago say hi, Rory. Hi, Penny, Serafina, and Santiago. I know one of you. Jenna says, I don't know, as Gen Z, I gotta have hope for Gen Alpha, which I think is the one after. Jenna, the millennials have hope for Gen Z, and I'm pretty sure Gen X had some hope for millennials. So I don't know, someone at some point's got to do something. When she calmed down, she emptied the rest of her bag by placing the wealth of petunias and pansies she almost always collected. Delight added, Melissa, have you ever seen a petunia this fiery red? Holly's house says she has to go. Thank you for joining us, Holly's house. I have not. I answered. It is stunning. I must go help. With the children's showers on the 3rd floor. It seems your squealing roused them. And they are excited to see what you brought. All right. We came up with a lot of content here, guys. Let me have a drink of water. I'll read back what we got. I do like this song. It's a little bit. If you are coming to this part of the show, it's because you just want to know what we came up with. And what we came up with was a sort of series of vignettes about people waking up in a building in a Solarpunk world that is run by an AI. And this is based on the game Green Skies, which doesn't really have any particular prompt structure. So we mostly just were designing different people to fill our rooms. And let me tell you what we came up with together. I call this a kinder future. The easterly breeze stirred the morning glory vines and woke Audrey with a sneeze. Audrey is perhaps my most important friend and tenant in my building. She maintains the code of my AI so it does not degrade. I've seen other buildings who lack such a friend, and they get stuck in cycles where they water the same plant till it drowns while the rest go brown. But my systems are kept clear of such corruption by the thoughtful efforts of my dear, sneezing Audrey. Still, it was only just past dawn, and Audrey could sleep in the brightest rays of sun. She'd been up late. Even when I went into low power, she was still huddled over a wide, handmade drafting table lit by the moonlight. She didn't like running the computers at night, and she felt that was irresponsible. It would draw too much power off the reserves and wouldn't be there in an emergency, so she often worked by hand in the late hours under the moonlight. Audrey was designing specifically a small arcade machine for the kids. They were getting older and grew fidgety with the endless games of baseball in the tall grass. The table she drew on, that drafting table, it was a gift from Taro in Unit 104. Taro was an early riser. He was already up, drinking coffee warm by the coals of his brazier in his smith shop. "What are we working on today, Taro?" I asked the stout man with glowing olive skin. He pulled his fingers through his wavy hair, taming down a cowlick for a moment, and answered, "The swing in the back, it's had its last good season. The rains have gotten in the welds, and with the young'uns getting bigger, it's about ready to toss 'em right off and collapse right down where it stood." "That is thoughtful of you, Taro," I responded. "Is there any resource I could channel to assist you?" "Just keep the lights on," Taro said with a rare grin. "Probably about to be a late one. You know how I am when I get my hooks in a project." "I do," I said. A motion alert flagged in my system from Holly's room. "Sorry, Taro. I must take my attention elsewhere. I suspect Holly is simply waking up, but it may be the case that her aunts got out again." "I hope not," Taro grumbled. "I'm still finding them in my damn fridge." I switched my primary operations to Unit 203, Holly Suite. Holly was an entomologist and kept a substantial sample of mostly living insects. She was largely concerned with maintaining numbers and populated the rather large communal garden with a healthy ecosystem. Her prized possession was a scrapped and polished slab of lucite, once a cover on some old world bar top, that held back the soil, which a large colony of brown ants had carved up with their paths. "Good morning, Holly," I said, and I set to continue my morning protocol message and check on her well-being, but she interrupted, as she was wont to do. With a sigh, she said, "Melissa, does it frustrate you how wasteful humans are?" "I beg your pardon, Holly. I do not understand what you mean exactly," I answered. "Like, take our dead," she said in a matter-of-fact way. "We just buried old Gary last week, right?" "We did, and it was a solemn occasion," I answered, but Holly continued as if I had not. "But obviously, if we were like the ants and not hung up on all that weird sentimentality, we clearly should have just composted him. Gary would have made great soil. How much better would that have been?" she said with an incredulous face, as if nothing was more obvious than that. "Holly," I answered tactfully, "recall that the committee did not agree with your proposal and asked you—" Yes, I know. "Asked me to stop insisting we compost her dead. But look at the ants," she said, leaning in closer to the old bar top bolted to the wall. "I just don't see how you can deny the brilliance of their social economy." There was a creak at the door that caught both our attention. It was Delight, an elegant but cheerful woman with hair turned blonde from brown in the sun. She held a small canvas bag, staining from the dirt inside, and stared with concern at Holly. "What?" Holly asked. "My dear, as I said before, We have plenty of compost. We are not, after all, ants, she began in her sing-song voice. But we could be, Holly said with exuberance. Delight seemed like she had more to say, but instead nodded and added, I suppose that's true, dear. Delight carried on into her room. Her place was a place bolted on every wall at every height with planters laden in rich soil and vibrant blooms. Some hung with vines of ruby tomatoes, others wound up the walls with fuchsia blooms. Delight was a collector and preserver of seeds. She would leave sometimes for days at a time, only returning when she felt she had enough new seeds for her collection. The communal gardens, plump pumpkins in the fall were hers, that she found out in the western woods. The tall stalks of corn were one of her proudest achievements, for it was an old desiccated cob she found stuck in the gutter of some abandoned superhighway. It took her great effort to grow that first stalk. The winding heather that lined the paths and perfumed her room was a particularly tricky clipping, as it was a far climb up the spire to the north, and the plant was near dead when she finally returned. What did you bring today, Delight? I asked. Easter lilies were blooming just up from the beachhead about a day's hike northeast. Oh, but the real fine Melissa was on the way back. My nose caught the distinct scent of Daphneodora. She clapped her hands together and danced on her toes. I told you there would be more to find, Delight, I said. Delight's Daphneodora had wilted under a particularly warm day last year. She feared the plant, a relatively rare one to have survived through the toxic years, might have been the last one she found. But now Delight was squealing with delight. When she calmed down, she emptied the rest of her bag by placing on the desk the wealth of petunias and pansies she also collected, a common occurrence for her. Delight added, Melissa, have you ever seen a petunia this fiery and red? I have not, I answered. It is stunning. I must go help with the children's showers on the 3rd floor. It seems your squeal roused them, and they are excited to see what you brought. And that, my friends, is how you play Green Skies. This is not actually the only Solarpunk game I have, but I liked this one setting the most. There is a second one I have, which I may play at some point. It's more complicated, and it is based on little animals. But let's see what Big Drew came up, because Big Drew had his own thing going on here. There's so much more chat than usual. Oh my god. Okay, I'm going to do my best to find the beginning of your story, Big Drew. But there is a lot. And I know sometimes it doesn't send your messages for some reason. I think Big Drew took a slightly different take on it. So let's see what he came up with. The last fading light of mankind flickered out at day's end, and when dawn broke, a new day's light rose on the hum of electronic beings. AI have officially taken ownership over the land. If you've ever played the game Stray, that's the concept of Stray. Craig, the eldest of the AI, sounded the chimes to alert the others their day had begun. For the next several hours, I will be empty except for my systems tidying the dwellings of my inhabitants. Bobby and Susie are usually the first to return on Wednesday as class lets out early, but on this Wednesday, a new tenant was slated to arrive to take up residence in the quarters left behind by the organic beings. We're not gone entirely. By the last human. I see. Organic beings, not beans, were not gone entirely. There were still plants and animals. The birds were my favorite, despite their constant effort to paint me white, I assume you mean. On this day, I listened to them chatter on the limbs of nearby trees. Clem and Delphine, a pair second generation AI were the new inhabitants of R-174. Their 18th floor penthouse would serve them well until their inevitable circuit failure. The fluttering of a butterfly had me so captivated that I didn't even note the return of George, Nancy, McKeely, and LeBryan. The latter two were named for their nations of origin, indeed, Ireland and France. Safety protocol required that my windows be shuttered and all exits sealed at once. No one in, no one out, unless with a secure access code. Each were unique to each AI assigned one. Upon entry, SecureBot 4-0102 discovered bricks had been dropped down my old laundry chute. It hadn't yet been decommissioned following the end of humanity, and the more youthful inhabitants were feeling a bit mischievous. 4-0102 called for a false alarm, input codes, and my world came into view once more. The birds' songs continued until the orb of illumination, what a cool way to put it, sunk beyond the horizon. A crescent moon did rise that night, the hum of electricity faded, and the crickets played fiddle all night. Pretty line there, Drew. Very lyrical. I think that's the end of it. Sorry if there's more. I think we did a wonderful job dreaming of a better world, folks. I won't say too much more other than if you haven't liked the video, consider giving it a like. I mean, you made it this far. And if you're not subscribed and you like this kind of stuff, we go through tabletop RPGs and sort of just do ride-alongs like this every Thursday at 6:30. And we also do read-alongs of, in some cases, very recently translated German folklore and Norwegian folklore. And we even did some New York folklore recently, which had a... sounds strange, but there was a distinct cultural group of tales that were found in the turn of the last century. Big Drew says there's one spot missed, may have failed to send. I may not have seen it either. There was a lot of messages today, which is great, because the thing I enjoy the most is being creative with people. The second thing I enjoy the most is playing Tears of the Kingdom Legend of Zelda, which is going to release in an hour. So, you know, happy Zelda Day. Thank you everyone for coming along and sharing in this lovely little dream with me. You know what? You don't have to leave. You can stay in my pretty, windswept, sun-kissed, flowering apartment.